I guarantee you, when we get through the comments on today's video, we are going to be called cop-hating bootlickers.
Probably.
Guarantee it.
Again.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's research-informed badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I'm your host, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from Aurora, Colorado.
MagTech is the only freedom seed I use on the range. I personally have over 100,000 rounds downrange of MagTech, and it's unbelievably reliable, very accurate, and a great value. Pick some up for your next range trip wherever you shop for range supplies.
An officer has finally arrived here. Go read the news stories that I've linked in the description. The employees of this organization, of this company, have started calling about 2 hours previously that this man is not communicative with them. He's wandering about without shoes on, kind of just skulking about their parking lot. Eventually he starts trying to get into people's cars, and then eventually starts like threatening to fight the people who are going in and out of their cars. And once he starts threatening to fight people, they step that up and send a single officer. This is the officer that they sent. We have badge cam audio. Let's listen in.
Hey man, what's going on today? Where are your shoes at? You need to talk to me? You need to tell me what's wrong? What's going on today? Huh? Well, I don't know. Why are you back in this gate? Huh? Why don't you have any shoes on? Don't be messing with that. Don't be messing with that. Quit. Stop messing with that. Do you know how to listen to what I'm telling you to do? Huh? Okay, you need to leave. Back off of me. Shoes called. Start me emergency cover. Get back! I'm gonna fucking shoot you, dude. Get back. Get off me, man. What are you doing? Come on. You're not in trouble. What? You're not in trouble. You're not in trouble, man. Step it up, step it up. Hey, man, help me! Fucking cool this. Huh? Get back. Get back. Get on the ground. Get on the ground now. Get on the ground. I'm gonna shoot you if you do not get on the ground. Get on the ground. Get on the ground now! Stop! Get back! I am gonna fucking shoot you, dude! Back up! Get down! 212 shots fired.
Unfortunately, this man did not survive being shot by the officer. This one is relatively new, and their internal affairs investigation, the investigation is still ongoing. As of the day of recording of this video, I do not have any indication that any charges have been filed. Oh boy. I hate these. You know, honestly, here's my honest thing. If I wanted to grow this channel, if I wanted to just attract the biggest audience I could, I'd just avoid this one completely. But I think it's got some good lessons for us.
I feel like Key and Peele, like I'm Obama's anger translator. I want to be jumping around behind you going, I really want to talk about this because it bothers me, it vexes me greatly.
So Mike, totality of the circumstances certainly matters here. And I want to recognize here at the beginning that you first have to make contact with somebody before you can communicate with them. And this officer literally never made contact with this guy. Now you might say, wait a minute, he talked to him a bunch of times. No, the guy never acknowledged his presence. He never verbally communicated with him. He never acknowledged that he heard what the officer was saying. And I'm not saying that justifies any of this guy's bad behavior. He clearly was non-compliant. Me, it looks like, you know, contaminated thinking, low emotion, non-compliance here, that this guy's just on another dimension. But you're not going to be able to affect his behavior if you cannot make contact.
Yeah, so here's an old term that I love to use from time to time. We call it conspicuous ignoring. What does that mean, Mike? That means that you are, you're obviously, you can hear and or see that there is a person, in this case a law enforcement officer, trying to make contact with you. You just pretend like they're not there or that you don't hear them, right? You're conspicuously ignoring them. That can mean a bunch of things, actually. It could mean the person has some sort of mental issue going on, like this guy apparently does. I'm not an expert, but he looks like he's going through some kind of mental episode. Or it could mean that they're a bad guy, an actual real bad guy who's trying to think of how am I going to escape or am I going to fight this cop or whatever. So they don't want to begin or receive your contact immediately because they're trying to think of a plan, right? I don't think that's what this guy was doing. I think John said at the beginning, he's having some kind of mental episode, and then he kind of sort of bull rushes the cop, but the look on his face tells me I don't feel like he has seriously bad intent. I think he's just going through something and his brain's not right.
I totally agree. And also, so the officer decides here, all right, I'm going to use my baton, and he's got a collapsible baton. Quite frankly, I've trained a bunch with sticks. Okay, so this has been part of my martial arts journey for the last 19 years. And I hate collapsible batons. I hate them, I hate them, I hate them. I think that if you're issued a collapsible baton, officers, you should just consider it a weight on your vest to help you be in better physical condition. Because exactly what we see here, he tries to use it a couple times. It's wildly ineffective. It's hard to get to the perineal nerve cluster with the collapsible baton. They don't work very effectively. And if you use them wrong, they can be deadly force. I just don't like them, Mike.
Concur 100%. Now, how do you know, Mike? What would you know about it? Well, I would know about it because I was our agency's one of our very first, shout out to Billy Mickle, who's going to be on the podcast, by the way. He was my partner in that. Very first collapsible steel baton instructor back in 97 or 98, something like that. So when these first kind of became on the scene, prior to that, the agency I worked for at the time had nothing other than guns and fists. Those were your options, right? So they gave us pepper spray and collapsible steel batons. I've used it more than once in the field. They are remarkably, in my opinion, ineffective. I had a time when I had a monadnock one with a power safety tip, which makes no sense to me, but that's what they called it. This little thing on the end of it that's supposed to maybe keep from like ripping flesh or something. I have no idea. But I had one of my fellow officers on the ground in a knockdown drag out with a guy, and he had gotten out of my car and run around the corner, and I come around the corner in the car to cut him off, and they're on the ground fighting, rolling around, and the bad guy's winning. I come running 15, 20 yards, full speed. I'm in the prime of my fitness, right? And I open this thing up mid-stride, and I come down on him like a ton of bricks, right in the common peroneal area on the outside of the thigh, textbook shot right where it's supposed to go, and it bounced off of him, and he kind of looked at me like, and then went back to what he was doing, and I had to go to plan B. So I don't know. The PR-24 I used earlier in my career, I found it to be far more effective than the collapsible steel baton. There's a lot of stigma around that for obvious reasons. If you were around in the 90s, you know why. So I don't know. Collapsible steel baton, not my favorite implement to use in this situation.
Are you serious right now? Safety power tip? Phrasing? We're just done with phrasing at this point? Is that how it's going? Oh, shout out if you get that dated pop culture reference. It's time to schedule your colonoscopy. Also, Mike was a police officer in the 1900s, just so we're all aware of how old he is. So again, batons, don't love them. But now the officer's going to continue to kind of back away from this guy. And again, he's clearly here, non-compos mentis, clearly doesn't recognize what the heck is the incredible wrongness of what he's doing. And I love the officer's choice of the taser here. Okay, fine. I think a taser was a great choice here. Now, it didn't work. The guy's wearing a really loose shirt, and we jokingly call the taser the Sex Panther of defensive tools because 60% of the time it works every time. it works within its use band, but it just oftentimes gets used outside its use band, unfortunately. And I think this was a good opportunity to try a taser, because trying to get this guy on the ground without harming him or getting harmed yourself was really a good idea.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the taser. I never carried one in the line of duty, but I've just seen it fail so many times. And now a good friend of John and I is a law enforcement officer here in Arizona, and he likes to say, look, it's never failed me because I've never used it at an inappropriate time. Basically, I've always used it within its use case, as John said. And when that's been the case, it's been very effective. So maybe it's more the officers and deputies using it when it isn't really ideal to use. I don't know. But if you're going to use it, like, this is the time, right? He's coming at you. He's already kind of sort of assaulted you. And the problem I'm having with this officer throughout this entire video isn't so much the choice of the tool that he's using, although we talked about the baton not being ideal. It's that I feel like he's either not very good with his defensive tactics, or he's not confident in his defensive tactics. It seems like he needs to get some training over and above whatever his department's giving him, because he seems highly, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, just not confident, right, in his fighting abilities. Look, if you're in law enforcement, we said this, I think it was Harris County not long ago, with a female deputy who stood over her partner as he's fighting someone and sort of jumped around and ended up shooting the guy, and we called that unjustified. There's a problem, apparently, with training, that these officers and deputies aren't getting enough defensive tactics training. They don't know how to fight. Basically, you need to be able to fight with your bare hands at some times in law enforcement, and I just don't think he had that in him.
I totally agree. Remember, the attitude has to be, I am the weapon. All else are just tools. When you become tool focused, tool fixated, tool dependent, you lose that. And here, I mean, he gets knocked down in the weeds, and he's even telling the guy, get off me. It's clear the guy's not trying to kill the officer, because the officer certainly doesn't look like he's working very hard. And I don't justify anything that this guy's doing. He's assaulting a police officer, 100%. And this is a serious crime. In Arizona, where I live, this would be aggravated assault. You're going to go to prison for a decade for this. But as an officer, you got to be able to fight. You got to be able to say, okay, this guy who's out of his mind has decided he wants to fight me. His problem is I'm better at fighting than he is. And if you're not, that's on you. You're going to have to get better at it. The department is not going to train you enough for it. You're going to have to invest your own time and resources. I do want to take a moment here, Mike, and stop and recognize that when they separate, this man has something from the officer's vest. I'm not sure what it is. When I first looked at it, I was like, is that his pepper spray? He's going to eventually drop it, but I do want to note that he is definitely picking stuff off of the officer's vest. And I certainly think that that's going to affect how the officer sees the rest of this confrontation.
Yeah, probably, possibly. Look, it's your job to do your best, right, as an officer or a deputy. It's your job to do your best to keep an eye on the hands, right? The hands are the windows to the intent, as John likes to say. And so keeping an eye on them, knowing the status of a given left or right hand of the suspect is critical. You need to know if there's something in that hand or not. So the fact that he had something here, is it possible that he perceived the guy still had it later on in the video when the shots were fired? I guess that's possible. There's all sorts of possibilities. And I said this in that other video, the Harris County video. If there's some other angle of this that we haven't seen that proves our theories wrong here, please provide it to me. I would love to see it. But I just don't know. Moving forward, I don't know where this officer feels this imminent threat of death or great bodily injury is coming from this guy. The officer's tired, right? Tired's one thing. Exhaustion's another. I don't sense he's exhausted. And John will talk in a moment a little bit more about exhaustion, but the idea being, one of the reasons I could use deadly force is if I'm alone and I'm being overcome or overpowered, or I'm too exhausted to continue and I'm going to lose consciousness or be overpowered by this individual. I don't know how anyone can look at this and come to that conclusion. Maybe, John, you feel differently. I don't know.
I don't feel differently. I agree with you 100%, Mike. I think, again, he's just got the ability here. I don't have a problem with him having the gun in his hand, but back away. Okay, this guy, I don't have the fighting skills to deal with this guy. Instead of re-engaging him, back way off, get away from him, just completely get out of his mind, watch him, make sure he doesn't threaten somebody else, and wait for your backup and say, this guy just kicked my butt, I need some help. But I think it's pride instead that kept this guy close. And now this guy is completely empty-handed. I just want to recognize he has nothing in either one of his hands. He is walking the officer down. But if we're going to justify the use of deadly force, we have to say the officer here is at risk, or perceives that he is at risk reasonably, of death or great bodily injury. And part of that is imminence? Does this guy have the ability to do you deadly harm? In other words, put you in the hospital or kill you? Does he have opportunity? Can he in this moment do you deadly harm? Has he manifested an intent to do you deadly harm? I don't see any of those here. I don't see any of that imminence that is required for a justified use of deadly force in self-defense. I think that the officer is definitely, there in the lawful performance of his duties, but this is a radically disproportionate use of force. There is no deadly threat here. So on proportionality, I think his response is not okay. He's not at risk of death here in any way. He is not imminently at risk of death for sure. So when we talk about the objective measurements of what justifies a use of deadly force in self-defense, whether we're talking about a police officer in this case or a private citizen, we don't have those here. And therefore, is this a reasonable use of deadly force? Now, again, I don't have access to all of the internal affairs investigation. I don't have access to the interviews with the officer. I don't have any of that. But based on what I see here on the badge cams, Mike, I do not see any objective, reasonable evidence that would justify the use of deadly force.
Yeah, when I got this video, it was sent to me by a family member who went, "What the heck? What am I looking at right now? Is this justified?" They wanted me to answer that question. Then I sent it to John, and we both watched it independently. I've watched this probably 5 times now. And I don't, as John said, I'll echo what he said, I don't understand what's happening with the shooting. I don't understand how he felt he was justified. I don't understand how he could feel there was a reasonable threat against his, against his person, that he was going to be killed or terribly injured. This guy's assault, such as it was never sort of ferocious or fierce. It was sort of like slap and tickle more than anything else. So I don't understand where in his mind he felt like these shots were justified. I look at this, and like I said, I've watched it a whole bunch of times. Every time I watch it, it just gets worse. And I think this is an entirely unjustified shooting. I just don't know how else to put it.
And don't hear us saying that we are okay with this guy attacking the officer. He's clearly not in his right mind. He's clearly contaminated thinking here, low emotion, non-compliant person. And he's assaulting a police officer. And I know that people are going to say, well, he put the quarter in the jukebox, so he gets to deal with whatever consequences come what may. No, we are still responsible ourselves to make good decisions, to be good, sane, sober, moral, prudent people. And if we can't be good, sane, sober, moral, and prudent, to at least use force in ways that are legally justified. Remember, the standard of legal use of deadly force is lower than the standard of good, sane, sober, moral, and prudent. It's just reasonable is the standard for legal use of force. But I don't see reasonable here, okay? And our job is just to call balls and strikes. I think this officer, looking at this video, in my opinion, puts this officer at grave risk of being charged for murder in this case. And in fact, if he is charged for murder, I think he's got a very good possibility of being convicted for it, depending on how the rest of the evidence looks in court. I don't see justification here. I will tell you that this man's family is going to never have to work a day in their life again, because the wrongful death lawsuit is going to be in the very high millions. And the city is going to pay out on that for sure. And if the officer ends up getting charged and getting convicted, he will lose his qualified immunity on it as well, because his actions were outside of policy and outside of legality. And he is going to be in real trouble to be paying that personally. I don't see good in this one, everyone. And again, as a general rule, active self-protection, we value the work that law enforcement does. We see that it's a difficult profession. We say that. You still have to make good decisions here. I don't see them. I don't think this was a justified use of deadly force, friends.